Stefan, would you like to just make a few remarks about this project?
Sure. First of all, as you can tell, I'm the only one with a strange accent up here. So I come to you from Toronto, Canada via Shanghai and through Brookfield. So Brookfield, as mentioned in the video, is an investor in major projects in Shanghai, in particular the project we call Xintiandi. Now, Xintiandi is Taipingqiao Xintiandi is a major project that's been developing over the last, since about 1997, so almost 17 years, or 16 years it's been on the go, and it probably still has another 3 to 5 years of future development to go. In that respect, we, Brookfield, have invested in this particular area. And it's very much, as we said before, it's very much a live, work, play environment. And this whole project is really about developing an entire community. Originally, it was the brainchild and vision of Vincent Lo of Shui On Land, who was the major owner and developer of the entire project. Originally, it was the master plan was by the architects SOM, so they were the master planners of the area with half a dozen other architects that we can talk about in a minute that helped build different aspects of the project. It's an award-winning scenario. It is, I can tell you from my own experience that I'm living in the neighborhood now, and I can tell you that it's very much that whole scenario of work, live, and play in the same place. It takes me 10 minutes to walk to work, 15 if I stop at the Starbucks and get a coffee. But it's a very interesting place to live.
Now, I think what's really interesting about this project is that you started by first building the retail heart, creating that retail heart, that sense of community, rather than, and then you built up the critical mass through residential. So you started with the retail first. Can you tell us why you took this approach?
Sure. I mean, as I said, we're sort of investors, and it's been a long time developing in this particular project. But I can tell you from speaking with the people that have been involved, that the original project was designed to build a community. So the first area that they took over was this older homes. They were all 1850 to 1930 style, what they call Shikumin homes, which are an interesting architectural blend of European and Chinese cultural pieces. About 60% of Shanghai, I understand, was built up in this fashion over time. So this particular area had some certain significance in that some of the homes were quite spectacular mansions at one point, and it also was the area where they held the first Communist Party Congress. So there was some history there that they wanted to maintain. So it took quite a bit of an effort for the developer to look at the area, redesign it, painstakingly redo some of the buildings. Some of them, unfortunately, were not salvageable, which is why when you walk through the Xintiandi area, which is full of food and beverage, high-end dining, mid-class dining, and it's a very unique area for people to go live, to walk through in the evening. It's very well known internationally. People will go to Shanghai, and if you say you want to go to Xintiandi, that's exactly where you are, which is perfect for me because being new to the neighborhood, whenever I travel in the city, if I want to get home, I can tell the taxi driver to take me to Xintiandi, and I'm there. But so those structures were rebuilt, reinforced, steel put in place where they needed to be. Oddly enough, it's now a mix. You know, they had to groove out and tunnel underneath a lot of the homes to put in the appropriate piping, water systems and gas systems, as well as Wi-Fi and fiber at the same time. So it's really a bit of an old and new put together. So that was the first part of the neighborhood, and from that, as you know, with a lot of Chinese developments, there is an entire sort of holistic look at it from a feng shui perspective. One of the feng shui things that's essential for the project is water. So that's why the man-made lake gets put in. So you have the man-made lake, which provides a nice walking area. You have the retail, the old retail, and all the food and beverage, and that becomes the foundation for building all of the residential. So the lake sits in the middle. To the west, you have a lot of the retail. To the south is there's 3 phases currently of residential. Excuse me. To the east is the office environment. And to the north is some hotels and a very spectacular road called Waihai Road, which is a very high-end, it's a very New Yorkish kind of style road with the Louis Vuittons and the Cartiers and the Guccis and so on and so forth. For those that have not been to Shanghai, It's a very cosmopolitan city. It's very much like New York, with slightly different language issues.
Now, as you talked about, the project is partly set in a kind of heritage precinct with older buildings.
Correct.
To what extent does your authentic or recreated heritage matter? Sometimes you might expect a project like this would just say, no, we'll just start afresh. But obviously, as you said, a lot of the old buildings were retained, worked with. But some places you feel like you're actually experiencing recreated heritage as well. And sometimes something we do get caught up with in Australia or Europe. Is this less of a concern when you work in China?
From what I understand, there is still a very much a sort of historical preservation community in China, and there's that willingness to go that extra mile, often from the developer themselves, in terms of their own heritage and connection with the city and the Chinese culture, that they want to maintain that sort of view. Unfortunately, in this particular instance, as I mentioned, some of the buildings were not in good enough shape to maintain, so they were replicated with newer materials, et cetera, in order to keep them in line with the overall theme of the area, particularly the shopping and food and beverage area, the Xintiandi, which was Ben Wood was the architect of who created and had the ideas for most of that area.
Now, as you've built out the project, the scale has really changed. Very kind of the retail precinct, that older precinct with the laneways, quite sort of human scale. And as you built out the project, it's become really tall, considerable scale, adjacent to major roads. Can you tell us a bit about the master plan vision and the different experiences and the scales that you've created?
So, as mentioned, it sort of goes from the lower scale retail areas through across the other side of the lake to the office precinct. And the office precinct is, like everything else, is much more modern. It's newer. It continues to be built. We have 2 new towers that are coming. One was finished the end of last December. Another one will be finished the end of this December and handed over for tenancy early next year. And included within those 2 structures is another 60,000 square meters of retail that will be added to the process. But it'll have a completely different feel than the existing retail.
In fact, you've worked with a mix of architects over a really long time, and sometimes that can be quite unusual. Often, we see a small group of architects work on a big project, and there's kind of a more kind of consistent style. Whereas on this project in Xintiandi, you've worked with quite a range of designers. How would you characterise the design mix?
Somebody said to me the other day, there isn't a design we don't have.
Right.
Because we have had that sort of multiple view of the environment. There are, the old Xintiandi style. There's the sort of Gothic style of the first office tower and some of the residential. There's a much more modern, cutting-edge, LEED gold style building for the 2 new office towers. So you get that real mix, and it comes from the different architects, most of whom were international, but there were some local Hong Kong and Chinese architects as well.
You made reference to LEED there, so there's a real commitment here around sustainability as well?
Yeah, SOL as a developer has made the commitment throughout their organization to build LEED gold, design build office towers wherever they can, particularly in the last sort of, call it 5 years. Even their original building for the 1997 Shui'an Plaza, which was the first building that went in, was an award-winning building for its innovative technology that went into the structure way back then, even before the LEED became a big thing.
Now, I'm curious, how important is the factor of time in creating the world's best and most iconic projects? This is a project that's taken a really long time and continues to kind of be enriched over time. How does a developer balance that, the need to pump out the product to manage the cash flow with the time required to create an authentic sense of place?
Interesting question, and one that, from a Brookfield perspective, was probably a little bit different to answer in that we came to the project late. So we're at this point in the project, we're going, yeah, it's good, it's cash positive, we're happy. But I can tell you that a lot of the projects that have been developed by SOL, both in Shanghai and around China, because they have multiple projects across China, a lot of them are built with a very long-term perspective. They will obviously build these large communities with residential, office, and retail amenities, and the residential piece of the puzzle hopefully is enough to reacquire some of the cash that they've set out in the project, but not always. And then there's very much a long-term relationship between the developer and the local government on fitting out a lot of these major projects.